Everyone loves a good story, and we know stories are a powerful tool to connect to the hearts of others in life and business. My guests today are both storytellers in their own ways, and they bring their strengths, experiences, and passion for helping others together on their podcast called the Unpacked Podcast. Evan Dewald and Tara Linsley are providing a platform for others to speak candidly, and we also learn about Evan and Tara's personal stories along the way, which I really love. So welcome to both of you. I'm so happy you're here with me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to start off actually and just mention how we met, because it was at a business function a little while back now. And I remember us connecting over one word, and the word was unstuck. I think we were tasked with introducing ourselves and just giving a quick snippet of what we do. And I remember Evan using the word unstuck, and I thought, and I think you were thinking the same thing. Oh my gosh, that's my word. And I used the word unstuck.
Yeah, I think you went first, and I was like, she just stole my answer. Like, dang, I think of something else quick.
So I thought that was really great that people can even connect over one single word. And that was our word. So yeah, I was thinking about this episode before you two joined me today. And I thought of you as the dreamer and the doer, as I have gotten to know you a little bit. And that's how you work together. And Evan, you are an Enneagram personal and corporate coach.
That's right.
And Tara, you are a digital marketing coach. And you both have quite a lengthy history of helping others in your work. So I'm fascinated to hear from you today. And if maybe we could just start by having you both share a little bit about your background and how you even came together and started working together. And I don't know, you can fight over who's going to go first.
We should arm wrestle, right? Arm wrestle. I think I can take her.
Yes.
You could, except you're nice and you want me to go first. So, you already gave me the nod. Yeah. So for me, I've been in marketing and communications for like 10 years, and I've worked mostly in nonprofits and with like entrepreneurs and small business owners. And I work as just with myself. It's just me working remotely, and I'm a consultant and a contractor in that kind of way. And I really work with people now, mostly working on digital marketing and helping them kind of work through in their small businesses and, like I said, nonprofits to kind of achieve their goals and build relationships with their audiences. And I have always leaned more towards helping causes and telling stories of really important organizations trying to do good in the world. So that's mostly what I like to do and what I'm drawn to.
Yeah. And with 10 years of that, that's a really great background and great base for the two of you working together and bringing that storytelling piece to life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Evan.
Yeah. So I worked in the nonprofit sector for like 28 years. So a long time, as a leader in different kind of various different levels of that. I'll just say what kind of a nonprofit it was. It was a church. So it was all about helping grow, safe communities where people could grow. And that's the way I saw it. And then turning that into some form of action in terms of serving the community. So, yeah, my whole life has actually been kind of focused around helping people do growth and transformation work. So when I made a shift outside of that particular nonprofit towards something else as far as a career change, it made total sense for me to kind of shift towards doing the coaching thing and using the Enneagram as a tool for growth and transformation, both for individuals, but also for organizations. And that's kind of probably the quickest way of kind of describing what that's about. I could explain the Enneagram and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure we want that today.
I would love that, Evan.
Yeah.
Maybe just explaining,
maybe
because
before I do, should I tell you how we actually then work together and how this
yes.
Yeah. Let me help you tidy up that question just so we can. I'm going to just try to be really compartmentalized here. I was leading a church, and we hired actually Tara to come on staff and work with us. 8 years ago?
Yeah, probably now.
About 8 years, something ago, something like that. And essentially a lot of that work was, I was looking for somebody that could help communicate our message and do some of those things. And I think I also knew that the church was looking for somebody that could try to keep me a little bit more organized and like on track and get some of the more like administrative things done, which is something that always has been a real challenge for me.
Yeah, I could use a Tara in my business too.
Yeah, everyone could use a Tara in their business. I'll tell you what. You could have Tara working in your business. Just throw a little commercial for you there.
I have said this multiple times. I actually don't do administrative work for everyone. That's so right. It was a very particular skill set. And actually, we were working together and volunteering. I was volunteering a little bit before they actually hired me. So I had a pretty good sense of like what it was like to work with the team on staff a little bit, coming in, doing some of just what was needed.
Yeah. And you did say you really like to work with causes that do important things. And you're very good at seeing needs. And I definitely think you could see
the need
for some administrative.
Yeah. And I am good at that. It's true.
So yeah, we started working together. And so for the first many years that we were working together, I was her boss in a lot of ways. But really we just ended up being kind of colleagues that were really working together. Work in our areas of expertise and kind of try our best to stay in our lane. And she was good at what she was doing, and I was quite happy to just let her do that. Mm-hmm.
And you've already alluded to this, Evan, but you sound like you're the dreamer in the partnership. And
Yep.
And I think, Tara, we've kind of labeled you so to speak, as a bit of the doer. And what a great balance. I know when I met the two of you, just to hear you both talk and speak, you almost finish each other's sentences. So I can see the beautiful dynamic and the strength of those two opposite qualities coming together. But you did mention, Evan, the Enneagram, and I would love to just ask you quickly, you don't have to go into great depth, but just what is this tool and how do you use it to help unpack people's stories?
Yeah, so essentially the Enneagram is a personality typing tool that's used to help people identify their core motivation. So it's identified 9 different types of kind of ways of seeing and having your motives met. Essentially would be the fastest way of saying it. That also then kind of leads you into like, okay, once you become aware of what your core motivation is, you also start to recognize how other people are seeing. So the Enneagram helps to grow empathy. It helps to grow understanding of what people like and dislike. And so it helps in work environments and things like that. When we talk about it in the context of our story, it is a lot about like, what are the unconscious things that we're doing that are both helping us to survive and stay alive? And also, what are the things that maybe might be hindering some of the ways that we could flourish and succeed? So it's a little bit of kind of each when you look at it from that perspective. Yeah.
So how important is that when you're working with folks to really unpack that? Because much of our conversation today is around story and what each of you do and bring to this partnership. But how important is that to really unpack those unconscious parts of our brain and how does it affect what we do every day?
I think it is an absolute game changer. Like, I don't know how, it's an interesting thing. So I work now in growth and transformation for 30 years. The last decade, I've been using the tool. And I think that in order for us to be able to, whether it's in our personal life, in terms of how we see or reflect back on our story, you're seeing your story with a particular set of lenses. That's just normal. That's how you survive. So you look back at your past and you're seeing it through a particular set of lenses. The Enneagram, I think, helps you to identify what that prescription is. What is the way that you're seeing? And that's both good and also maybe some of the challenging spaces in there. If you can see it, right, then you can start to do something about it. If you can't see it or are unwilling to look at it, then you're kind of being forced or driven towards using the tools that you were taught when you were a kid. That some that maybe work just in really great ways and some that actually are no longer working for you. But we continue to try to use them because it's the only thing we know how to do. And so I do find that, whether this is for an individual who's trying to unpack their story and kind of look back at some of those individual things, These are people who are going, I don't know how I got to this place.
Mm-hmm.
It actually isn't that hard to see when you're willing to see. So safety, all of those kinds of things become really, really important. We talk about growth and transformation. And they're different. Growth and transformation are two different things. And I think that's one of the missed things. You can grow in a particular area. But transformation is the whole thing moving forward. In other words, you can grow in your intellect, you can learn lots of things. But if you never put those things into practice, you haven't experienced any transformation in your life. You just learn some stuff.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And so I think that's a little bit of how that tool can become really helpful. And a coach, like that's a lot of what I will do. It's like I have clients often who I'm like, okay, we've learned a lot of things. But if you really want to get out of the space you're in, if you're feeling stuck, this is how we started meeting, if you're feeling stuck, then growing in a particular area of intelligence is the way I would talk about it. It's hopeful, but it is only a third of what it means to grow into the rest of kind of who you are and what you are made to be and how you want to operate in this world. That makes sense.
Do you have an example? Like, can you give an example of like a core motive for someone, and then
I'll talk
like
about
how it holds you back when you're not aware of it?
Yeah. So I'm the 7, so I'll only pick on myself. So I'm an expert on me. Mostly.
Sounds good.
Mostly.
Kind of.
The 7 is known as the enthusiast. They have a strong desire to avoid psychological and emotional pain. So a lot of what's happening on an unconscious level is a distraction away from what I perceive as could be painful for myself and or for others. So I distract myself, and I do it really quickly. So I can be fun, I can be charming, I can be the life of the party, I can be all of those kinds of things. And in a lot of ways, people like 7s to be like that. Yeah, it's fun to hang out with. It's super fun. And that was good for me for a long time. As I started to grow and I started to see myself more clearly, I started to recognize that some days that is a really great thing. Other days, it's a complete distraction from actually naming the hurt or the grief, the grieving that I'm doing, or the sadness that I'm avoiding in my own personal life. Pain. But I'm in the head center, and this is another layer of the Enneagram. I won't get too much into it. Logically, though, I would tell you that pain is probably our most important teacher. It actually shapes and changes the way we see and experience the world, even the way we care for the people around us.
Yeah.
But externally and on an unconscious level, I'm often avoiding it.
You're probably reading a lot of people's mail right now, right? I can hear somebody listening. I can identify with that. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I so agree with you. That place of pain that we want to run from is the actual place where we discover so much about ourselves. And it's just that double-edged sword in a way, if I can put it like that. Yeah. But it is such a game changer. And I love the way you've uncovered this a little bit. I don't know much about the Enneagram, so I'm learning as you're sharing. But this is the concept is so powerful in how we unpack our stories and how we discover who we are and what those things are that hold us back. Some people don't want to do that work, but I know many, many do. And that's really where that growth comes into play and just creates such a more enriching life. So I really thank you for sharing that. I find it fascinating. I'm sure we'll touch on that again as we're talking, but Tara,
we could read Tara's mail too if you want.
All right, Tara's mail coming up.
Totally teasing you. Go ahead and ask your question.
So Tara, yes, besides reading your mail, you're more of the doer. And again, these are just labels I've picked for the two of you. Not that we want to, label the both of you in quite that way, but we're just picking fun words today. You're also a storyteller in your own way as a digital marketing coach. Mm-hmm. And so when the two of you come together, how does that work with your two forms of storytelling in how you help others and how you kind of shape conversations with those that you speak to? Like, do you kind of ground Evan when, as the dreamer and the other flip side of things? Like, tell me a little bit about your thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I ground him. No, I don't. And that sounds a little bit like, to me, when I hear grounding, I'm like, it would be like trying to bring it back down to earth. And that's not what I'm trying to do with dreaming. So I learned very early on that, like, that's just how he is. That's just his personality. And he's going to dream and dream and dream. And I don't always have to make everything happen. He was very clear about that. And that is kind of my own need, is to make things happen. I always can start to dream in probably the way that's like, how am I going to practically do the steps to make this work? So that's more where my brain goes more quickly, because I find that more fun than trying to create a big vision or try to create a big dream for us to figure out. But I probably would ask questions around like, oh, tell me more about that. Or how do you think this would play out? Or how would this affect the people that are involved? And if I know we're just dreaming, I can just listen and be a part of it. But once the dream is said a few times, then I know we're probably doing it. So in working together, that was like, okay, now I have to get serious about how we're going to actually make this happen and ask some different questions. But that's mostly how I'm more detail oriented. And then when it comes to storytelling, I think we can meet each other in that space. And Evan's really good at seeing the overarching story. And I'm trying to figure out how it will connect with people. And we both can kind of see that. And we just try to figure out how to tell the stories so that it's connecting with different audiences and meeting kind of the goals that we're trying to achieve in the storytelling. But he's really good at it. Like, one of the most annoying things is I can give him notes for like, okay, I think this is how we should say this. And I think this is the strategy. And I think this is the goal. And he reads the notes in like 2 seconds and is like, okay. And then can like do a video or do a podcast intro after 2 seconds of reading my notes. And I could never do that. I'm like, I wrote the notes and I don't remember them. So I'm really good at the details, but being able to like articulate the story and really draw people in is a gift he has.
Well, and the two of you, just before we jumped on, we were laughing about the fact that Evan didn't read any questions, didn't even, it wasn't even on the radar. And Tara, you read them all, and
I had a question about them. And
well, I think even you might have brought one up yesterday.
Oh yeah, I was asking you about one. The grounding thing, because I was like, I just don't think I ground you, and I don't stop the dreaming. There's no point in that.
Well, I think this like there's a part of me where I want to clean this up for a second.
Okay, go for it.
So, I think what people don't recognize when you look at a visionary person or a dreamer, is that they can do that in both contexts, in healthy ways and in unhealthy ways.
Good point.
So in a lot of ways, the way I like to talk about, even with the Enneagram, is that oftentimes the great gift you give the world is the curse you bear. So what I mean by that is, I have a great gift to be able to envision and reshape and re-dream people's ideas and thoughts and all those kind of things. In fact, even when I was thinking about a career, this is kind of a new career, I was like, I could hire myself out as a professional dreamer. I legitimately could sit down with a business owner or a person, hear a little bit of kind of what their challenges are, or what's going on, or what they hope to be about. And I can dream like wild. And I love it. I love just taking the chains off, so to speak, and just randomly throwing out dreams. Okay? That is a gift that I can give to the world. Even I can help people to see hope in the midst of some of their really hard or challenging things that are going on. And that's one of the gifts I bring to coaching. The curse that I bear is that in my own life, it becomes a form of escapism. In other words, when things get difficult or challenging, I can take myself to a futuristic dream that is utopic in nature, that is void of pain or hardship. And it's a way that I can escape. So do you see what I mean by that?
Oh, yeah.
So here's where I want to say it's kind of an interesting thing. So Tara is a 2 on the Enneagram. She's known as the helper. And she has a strong desire to be supportive and encouraging and all of those kind of things, caring, and to meet the needs of others. So strong compulsion. The great gift she gives the world is her ability to see the needs of others and to begin to meet those needs. So you see how when you think of a dreamer working together in a healthy setting, and you think of a helper, a two, in the healthiness of their own type, how those two numbers can really come together when trust is present, and when the two isn't feeling like they have to be owning everything, in particular the absolute outcome. The curse that the two bears, though, is that they don't often know what they need. Very good at identifying other people's needs, not good at identifying their own, and probably worse at saying them out loud.
Yeah, even once I know them, to say them is like crushing.
It's such a vulnerable thing.
Yeah.
So the reason why I say all that is because that was something that, because we were using the Enneagram, I think, and we were talking about it. I was learning about it. So when I'm learning about something, everybody's learning about it. That's just how it is. If you're around me, you're going to learn about it. And she was around me. So we were learning a lot about that. And I think that is partly what even you're, like you alluded to this earlier in this, I think what spurred on this little rabbit trail I just took us on.
It's a good one.
Was even for Tara to go, well, sometimes dreaming is just escapism. So I don't have to act on everything my boss says out loud in a meeting. Because it might not be real. It might just be him escaping the current thing that's difficult right now as he's processing through. He's just a little escape moment to dream about something else to avoid this. What I was learning was, if I can recognize that I'm doing that, I'm just escaping into a utopia here. I need to come back to real life, which I work hard at doing. Then my dreaming then can become more productive, and the help that she gives can become more productive. She doesn't have to go overwhelmed by every rando idea I say. And when we were working together, it was like 2, 3 separate dreamy ideas per meeting.
Oh yeah.
Like literally.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Can you imagine if you're the person who thinks you're supposed to make that happen? How stressful that would be.
Evan, the reason I was quiet listening there when you were talking is because I can so identify with what you're saying. I'm on the dreamer side of things for sure. And I bet I spent years in that kind of escapism or being the person to bring up 2, 3, 5 different dreamy ideas in a meeting. And I'm sure I stressed out a lot of people going, how are we going to execute on some of this stuff? Because it's usually not small. Dreams are usually on the bigger side, right? The more challenging side. Yeah. But I can so appreciate that, because until you are willing to recognize, what is the backside of dreaming, and there's no doing, why is that? And so that was a game changer for me, is when I recognized that I had to apply the doing as well to the dreaming. And that may not have been my strong suit. I'm not the most organized person, and I'm sure Tara could run circles around me in that area. But, I had to get a plan, though, of how to execute and how to walk out some of these things, and realize, why was I never moving those things forward on my own? Yeah. So I can appreciate what you're saying. It's powerful, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
For sure.
And I think what is interesting is, like, in a lot of ways, we're both doers. Yeah, I actually do want to get stuff done. I really do. But I want to get the big thing done. The little things start to, they feel like weights to me. And so I'm always kind of after the bigger thing. And I think that can be kind of one of those real challenges. I would say this, because I think this is important for a listener to hear, whether you're in a personal growth and like looking at your story, or whether you're in an office space or a working environment like we were in our, is like, how do I word it? I most definitely had people who had to leave my presence because the dreaming and the vision casting that I was doing was too much. And it just felt like a burden to them. And so I have
Interesting.
There is a wake of people behind dreamers that aren't able to go as fast or aren't able to keep up or feel the burden or the weight of making all of those dreams happen. And it's very hard. And so I would say, it's funny, well, how did we ever not get along? So this might be one of your questions that you're getting at, but it's like, I do remember early on when Tara was volunteering and she was helping to do some work for me. And she would send long, detailed emails to me about things that we'd had to think about in terms of like communication. She was using your profession to help us. And like, I'll tease you, but it's like sometimes like 2-page emails, 3.
It was long. They were long.
Very long with all
details,
the details
yeah.
in them. And I would respond like this. Now I think about now and knowing Tara, I just think, oh my God, what I did to her. But I would literally respond, yep.
Yeah.
Or okay. Right? Like to a 2.5-page email, I'd respond, okay.
But you just said like you felt bad about, and I feel bad too, because I'm like, well, of course you were never going to read that.
Now you know. No,
yeah, like both.
I was reading it. It was too many things for me to like.
Yeah.
So, but this is what's fascinating, and you don't even remember this conversation as much as I do. But she phoned me one night, and you were in tears. You were upset. I'd responded to another email with okay, like a 2-page email with okay. And it occurred to me in the moment while we were talking it through, it occurred to me, she doesn't think I trust her. And so I
with a one-word response. Yeah.
So I just stopped and was like, are you upset because you think I don't trust you? Is that why I'm getting these long emails? Like, what's happening here exactly? And it was kind of one of those real aha moments, I think, for both of us as we worked together. Because I actually thought I thought she was calling to tell me she was done.
Really?
She was upset. You were in tears already, all those kind of things. I hadn't seen you cry that much yet.
Yeah.
now
we know.
Now it's like,
yes.
She's okay. That's actually just a form of strength for her.
Yeah.
But it was just this moment of realization, kind of go, one of my team members, I am stressing out one of my team members. And in that moment, I was like, oh, you think I don't trust you? And when I say okay to a 2.5-page email, I'm saying, I trust you. I don't need to read this. Whatever is in here, I know you. I trust who you are and how you're going to do this. And I've seen enough of them to know that you're trustworthy. So, okay. To all the things you said here. Okay. That's not very reassuring to somebody who's trying to find her way. Right? And figure out what her boss needs and what the organization needs, all those things. That's not reassuring at all. And so I had to get better at that. But that was a realization that evening. I remember it was nighttime as I was pacing around in my house, thinking I was about to lose this incredible volunteer who I liked and thought she was good at what she was doing. And I was like, oh.
You've probably just described what so many business organizations look like in terms of the visionary versus the executioners of the information, right? And I can't imagine how many people just unknowingly are just doing what they are wired to do, but without filtering it through the people that are alongside them, helping them through their lens of how this may be coming across. It's such I'm going to say a simple fix when you actually think about it and you tune in to what's happening. I mean, it might not be an easy fix, but it's simple in nature to understand once you're paying attention. But that's powerful what you just shared. And I can see the two of you, you're very, very different. You both bring such unique gifts to the table. And I can see over the last few years, I'm witnessing the strength of you bringing those gifts together. And for some, those gifts may have torn a business working relationship apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's such a beautiful example of what can be created out of building that trust with each other. Because really, isn't that what it's about, is bringing those unique gifts together and filling in the gaps that you don't have with somebody else's gifts.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely critical in any kind of work environment or any kind of business that you're trying to put forward, is to come together, and that provides that acceleration. So that's what I'm seeing and hearing as you're talking. Yeah. Now that you're bringing these two amazing sides to both of you together, what do you think you're accomplishing? It's like so much more in what you're trying to do and helping others. Like, do you see that as an absolute acceleration and traction in what you're trying to accomplish?
I think, like, even looking back, once we knew the Enneagram and we had worked through that moment that you were talking about, that was super early on before I was even like officially working with you, we worked through that and things got so much faster. And the way that we worked together and the way that we approached everything in our jobs, it was like I had the confidence and the trust to do what I thought was right. And I knew what decisions needed to come forward when I needed to ask Evan something. So the emails got shorter.
Yes, did they ever? Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Everything got quicker though. And I also knew if I was in front of him, like physically, I would hear more ideas, but I also would be able to stay in front of more things too. And know what I could do and what, like, how far I could push things and what questions I needed to ask. And things got really easy. The stronger, you always used to say to me, the stronger our relationship was, the quicker the work would get done.
The more productive we would be. And that was true of all the types, not just not just Tara and I. It was like, no, everybody. To know how people are seeing. Remember that Enneagram helps you to reveal your way of seeing. So that's how you see a dream, how you see a problem, how you see, some are more prone to solutions, some are more prone to actually pointing out the problems. I've had people say, I feel like my place in the world is to point out what's wrong with it, so that we can work towards making it right. I'm like, wow, when I experience you as an incredibly negative person, that's kind of what I want to say. Like, yeah, you seem to be really pointing out all the problems. Like, not super fun to be around right now for me, right? Especially because you're pointing out pain. And guess what I don't do? I don't like to do pain. I want to be positive and optimistic. I think that's the way through. And that's my way of seeing in the world. So I've kind of figured that out. I would say what's interesting though about, you're interviewing the two of us, so you're learning about the 7 and the 2 and the way we work together. But I would say this: Tara didn't just do what she was told. She didn't just always do what her boss said. She pushed back. She questioned things and pointed out the blind spots that were kind of happening for me. Like, I could dream up a big idea and not always think about how it was going to affect the current status quo that we had going on or the individuals involved. And there were definitely times in meetings when, in maybe anxious, I started to read it very differently. I was like, oh no, this is great. I didn't hear it like a criticism.
Right.
But where she would say, well, this is a great idea. She always encouraged. Always the first thing was encouraging, and that's helpful with the dreamer. I love that idea. I can't help, and you'd say this all the time. That's why I'm just repeating literally. I love that idea. It makes me actually really excited. I can't help but wonder how that's going to affect, Winston. Winston's really connected in this group. And if we're going to do this, probably that group is going to have to man, how will we care for Winston? She always is pointing out the needs of the individuals in the organization. And then I'd be like, oh, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to cause pain. As much as I don't want to experience, I don't want to cause it either. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to check in with Winston. I can do that.
So it was all the way she was positioning it.
100%.
Right? Yes.
And I would go and do it. And I would think about the other Winstons that were present. Care for those people as we make this transition towards doing something else or whatever that might be. And in that regard, it became a more helpful thing. But there were moments when you were like, hey, how about we just take a second here? Like, you're leaving
like, whoa.
you're leaving the train station and no one's on the train yet.
Well, I kind of see you two as iron sharpening iron, almost in a really positive way, because that's really what that is. And would you say those have been some of the bigger challenges that you've had? Like in the beginning, I can see now you've refined many of them, not that you're probably challenge free with each other and how you work together, because that's almost impossible. But would you say that's been a bigger challenge for you?
I think that this is what I would say. I wonder if there were moments for you when it felt like, when you go to the chuck wagon races. We went to the chucks this year. Our group of friends went to the chucks. We got to stand right on the rail. Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh, and cool.
When you watch a chuck wagon race take off, now that is some wild, organized chaos.
You know what it was? The food bank event.
Yes. Yeah. So, So like, there are definitely moments like that where it's like, I am certain it feels like this to be around me, where it's like everything seems calm and all of a sudden it feels like I just created massive chaos into a calm situation with the intention of winning a race, of taking a team of people and going somewhere important.
It was always
it feels
important.
wild. And you feel like your ego and your everything, you could fail. Like, definitely the food bank event is a great example of that, where it's like, we could have failed.
Yeah, like Evan walked in from a meeting. He came back from a meeting one day with like nonprofit leaders, including our local food bank in the pandemic, and the needs had doubled and they didn't have enough money, and it was coming up on Christmas. It was like late September, maybe even early October when you came back to that meeting. And Christmas is the biggest time. Obviously, that's a huge time when people are accessing the food bank, and everything was just like they were low on volunteers. They didn't have the funds anymore. That like people were really struggling in the pandemic and needing access to food, and especially at the holidays, it was being very apparent.
December.
It was like a real need. But he came back and was like, "This is happening, and we need to do something about it." So I think we should get 100 volunteers, close down a grocery store, and shop for all the Christmas hampers in December for the food bank, and raise $20,000 to do it.
Amazing.
And it was amazing. Really amazing. Important. I cared deeply about it. Also, I was like, okay, how are we going to do this? Tell me you have a strategy or a plan.
I actually think in the meeting she was waiting for me to say it 3 times, because usually that was the rule.
Yeah.
As soon as I said something 3 times, then it was like, oh, this is still on his mind. 2 weeks later,
we're doing it.
This is probably happening. Yeah. In that meeting, I was like, no, I don't have time to say this 3 times.
Like, it's happening.
We're doing this.
So,
I need to go. Yeah. I could convince my leadership team. We need to find. And I was like, listen of all the practical ways we were going to do it, and it was happening.
It was happening. It was very clear it was happening. And in that moment too, I was like, we don't have enough time to locally grassroots raise the money. So we need a different strategy for that. So I immediately was like, no, I can't raise $20,000 this quickly, in a month. So we're going to need to figure out who can donate this and who we need to approach. So it was just a different way of going about it. So I was able to challenge some of the things that I knew right away I couldn't make happen. But by this time, we had been working together for quite a while. So it was still like the chuck wagons. But I had a lot of trust. And also, he is a doer. So when he says he's going to do something, we know what each of our strengths are in the roles to make it happen. But yeah, it sometimes is like, hang on.
Yeah, I love, Tara, what you said. You said something when we originally met, and I took note of it. And you stated, progress only moves at the speed of trust.
There you go.
I'm pretty sure that might have been Evan. Or I stole it from
Evan? I thought it was you who said that. But I'm going to give credit to one of you, and maybe you're finishing each other's sentences. But that quote came out of our conversation, and I thought it was a powerful one, because the foundation that's been established here is just giving both of you just such speed forward and impact that I can see from the way that you both work together. So, I want to ask you, the the overarching vision that you both had in serving others from the start, I can see is still guiding you today. But you are just using, you started off in a church setting. Now you're in a kind of a different format of working. We'll call it, maybe you're just using a different vehicle now for doing some of the same work. Would you say that that's accurate, and how effective is that for you? Because you're still working the same way together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are working the same way together, but it's mutual. So I'm not the boss anymore.
That's a good distinction. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not in charge of this chuck wagon race.
Is that what we're calling it now?
I don't know. I think so. It might feel that way a little bit, but I do think that there is some commonality in what we really hope for, and that is that we really do believe in some of the same kind of values in terms of helping people to grow and experience transformation. We believe that the vehicle for doing that is story. That people's stories is not only the place of healing, but it's also the place of growth and transformation and vision and passion and all of those kinds of things as well. And they kind of sometimes both have to be done simultaneously. So we like to hear what people are passionate about and how they're trying to make a difference in the world. You hear that on Unpack. Mm-hmm. But we also really want to hold with a kind of a place of honor the story that's brought these professionals to that.
Right.
So, and there is a tension sometimes. We have a podcast host or somebody who jumps on our recording with us, and they really want to tell us about the book they wrote, or the project they're doing, or they want to get to the
topic that they're there to talk about.
The topic that they're there to talk about, and we're like, hey, so what was, what was little Kim like?
Yeah.
Kind of curious, when little Kim was running around, what was that experience like for her? How has that experience of growing up contributed to who you are today and what you're passionate about here? Like, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But before we talk about that, right? And I think that creates a tension for some people, and people aren't used to that. And it's a vulnerability. It's like it brings up other
failure.
Like, failure is a part of life and growth. We don't intentionally go out to try to fail so we can learn something. We're not doing that. But failure teaches you as much as pain does. In fact, the two are pretty good cousins. They're for sure.
It took me a long time, though, to understand how my failures really were a positive learning opportunity for me. Not that they were positive, but that they could turn into an opportunity for me to understand some things on a much deeper level. And then there was the part of, I didn't want to tell my story for many, many years. It took me a long time to get to that place because of all of those pieces, the fear of judgment, condemnation, all of those things that I was feeling. It was an interesting ride, but it doesn't come automatically. It takes some work to get there. But you're right. What a powerful tool that it is to connect with others. And I can't imagine something else more powerful to connect with others than sharing the most vulnerable parts of ourselves to connect, because there's people that feel very isolated in their own story, thinking they're the only ones.
Well, it's just funny because what you just said was like the definition of being stuck.
Yes.
Right? Like not being able to acknowledge kind of what's happened or what space you're in right now. That's stuck. Like, even if it's not particularly painful, but rather just really boring or mundane or whatever to you, like however you're wording it, that is a form of stuckness, which I have discovered is not a word. But we're
making it a word.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So to me, that is it. It's like sometimes just being able to name that, hey, this didn't go the way that I wanted, and I'm a contributing member of this not going well.
With some compassion.
With some compassion, Say, oh, I did that wrong. I know what was happening inside of me at the time. It's not an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an acknowledgement that I'm human.
Mm-hmm.
We're human.
Exactly.
So, welcome. Like I had somebody say some things in one of my coaching sessions. This was like last week, actually, not that long ago. They listed off a whole bunch of things. There was a lot of tears. They were quite upset about it. And when they were done, I was like, it sounded all very human to me. And they were just like, what? That's your response? And I was like, yeah, that sounded like you were a human. Was there some expectation that you were superhuman? I am the one that's keeping me from being free. And I think that's like, and that's some of the personal coaching that I do. But in businesses, it plays out the same way.
It does. Yeah. That's been my experience too.
Yeah. Humans come to work. That's a wild thing about that.
And you bring your life to work.
You bring your story goes to work with you. Yeah. It's like
it sure does.
And people are like, oh no, we're going to be a level of professionalism. Okay. Well, you have a level of professionalism in the way that you talk, but it's not going to make your environment more productive.
Knowing your stories help make your decisions. They help guide your decisions, whether you realize it. It's kind of coming full circle back to how we started this conversation, that unconscious place of how we are guided and we don't even know it.
It's a funny thing. I went into a business a couple of weeks ago and they asked me for the price, what it was going to cost for a couple of sessions before with each of their employees and then a training thing. And I gave them the price. It was like $2,500 or something. That's pretty high. And the owner was like, wow, that's pretty expensive, for the sessions you're going to do before and then the session. And I was like, yeah, it is. You've come to me with the problem. And it's that one of your people on your staff is not working well. They're not playing well with us. How much is it going to cost to replace them?
Exactly. Yeah.
And he was like, oh, it's going to cost me a lot. Not just financially, it's going to cost me a lot in all the information she has, all the gifts that she has, even if I'm lucky enough to, on my first try rehiring, find somebody that can do all that. And I was like, okay. So I'm just saying, let's take a kick at this with this amount.
Such a great point.
Yeah.
I have one more question for you.
Sorry.
One more question. And I feel like it's the right way to end this conversation by asking you being the dreamer and the doer here, what dreams are still on the table for you two? What's still out ahead of you that maybe hasn't taken place yet? Or do you even know?
Like in terms of the podcast, some of the things I think we're always trying to grow it so more people can feel free and heal and feel like they're not alone. Like that's always my desire, is for more people to feel like their stories can be told in a way that's delicate and with humor, and also that helps people grow. So I think we're always dreaming up new ways to do that and explore with the podcast and in our own businesses too. And yeah, I think those are always things. Like personally, I always want to be a growing person.
Yeah, I would say those things are absolutely true. Because we actually do believe we're doing something that can help change lives.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, it's like, I don't need to be popular. I don't even need Unpack to be popular. I just want to help change and help people experience freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's through the venue of the podcast, then I want that. If that's through, Recess Creek or coaching or even the marketing and the way that Tara is helping some of her clients to tell stories well is really, really important to me. So that's one of the things. You did just ask a dreamer about dreaming. So
yeah.
I did. I knew what I was doing.
I think that we have a really important message of engaging your story as a source of freedom. I think that is scary stuff for some people. So I dream that part of what our listeners are hearing on Unpacked is that they start to hear that dreams and freedom are hard work, and they're work that requires looking at some of the the shadowy things that are present in our stories, and that everybody has the capacity to be a great gift to the world. Mm-hmm. And I that's important to me. And I'm not done. One more dreamy thing that we're doing. We have so many important nonprofits in our city, here in Chestermere, but in Calgary and in other places. And I believe that our current political environment, at least here in our town, has been very, very hard on the nonprofit sector. And I don't think that our communities, whether it's the city of Calgary or the city of Chestermere or any of the surrounding areas, are recognizing that people who work and are a part of nonprofits are doing it because they so strongly believe in the vision of what that place is doing. And I think it was on Braveheart, there's nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think he's trying to pump up his warriors to kind of go into battle. And it to me, it is heartbreaking to see that with what little amount of resources are present to the nonprofit sector, the immense return on investment that is to a community.
Mm-hmm. Such a great point.
Yeah. So one of the things we're trying to do right now is we're prepping commercials. We recorded one last week for a local nonprofit here that we're going to start using on Unpack to go, hey, here's a nonprofit you might want to notice in our community that's doing something important. And just trying to use our little platform to be able to communicate. Your nonprofit sector in whatever town, city, place you live is holding up everything that you value about your community. Mm-hmm. That's hockey. That's the minor hockey. That's the volunteers in your school. That's just imagine the amount of teachers that are volunteering extra time to coach volleyball.
Yeah.
To do whatever it might be, or the women's shelter, or the food bank, which we've already talked a lot about the food bank, like all of those places. That's part of the reason why this story of the food bank was so important to us, because it was like, this is a nonprofit who is saying, we're passionate about feeding people and we don't know how to right now. We're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're in trouble. Yeah. And so to me, I see our voice is a voice to remind people of what really matters in terms of caring for neighbor, listening to people's stories, and helping others to experience freedom. If you don't get Christmas dinner, it's pretty hard to be envisioning a beautiful neighborhood and how you could contribute to it. Right?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And what a great vision to end on for what you are endeavoring to do. And I don't know how somebody couldn't get on board with something like that. That's just, it's so important for any community. But I really applaud you for just paying attention and giving a voice on your podcast for things like that. I think that's what this is all about, is bringing those kinds of visions to life, because it matters. So awesome. It's awesome. And I'll be paying attention to what you're doing with that vision and how you're going to roll that out and get involved. So if you want to learn more about Evan and Tara and what they do and how they do it, and also their podcast, the Unpacked Podcast, you can go to unpackedpod.ca, and we're going to have all of this information available in our show notes as well, and how you can reach them and a little more about them. And I just want to thank you both again so much for being here. Any parting words, or we'll sign off?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for listening to our story.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and you two are both a gift. So thank you so much. And also thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We'll see you next time.